Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Three Men Talking Fantasy Football. I am Mr. Bill DeCouslis. I'm here with Mr. Anthony Perez and Mr. Thomas Lag. How you doing, gentlemen?
What's going on, Billy?
I'm sure we've all been better, but yeah, we're doing great.
Good. I believe you. We are coming to everybody today in between, right after Championship Sunday, about a week and a half ahead of the Super Bowl. It was a crazy championship weekend. I did not expect the Eagles to completely thrash the Commanders like that, although the game was a lot closer. Basically,
no, it was. It was definitely a lot closer than the numbers finished off at.
Yeah, the Commanders were down by 11. They had the ball, and then it was the fumble that they lost, and then that was basically all she wrote after that.
It was 3 turnovers.
I got a question for both of you. So, how do you guys feel about that? The end of the Eagles game, the whole thing, the jumping, the jumping over the line of scrimmage. Hey, if you keep going like this, we're going to award you a touchdown thing.
Well, I saw Patrick Mahomes having money signs coming down. He's like, "Oh, they could give us points for free. That's awesome."
All right, very good. I like how you turn that back into that. So back to the Eagles. Yeah.
No, that was so interesting because I actually did not know that was a rule, but I can't necessarily fault the Washington Commanders for doing what they can to try to stop it. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
At that point, they were just doing whatever they could. But actually, that's a new rule for me to hear. I had no idea that even existed. So
I don't think anybody's ever heard that rule before.
Thought it was pretty funny. But I'm also very curious, to what point would they have gone to grant that free score? Like, how many more times would they have let that ride before they finally said, you know what, it's done. They score.
Maybe after the warning, one more time, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Did they clarify that it would have been a touchdown?
They could just award you a touchdown. That's what they said.
So they award them a touchdown. What if they, miraculously stopped them 3 times after that? Before that,
then no, then it's not. But it's funny because, like, if anybody who's played football knows, like, when you're backed up at the 1 yard line, your coaches teach you, like, hey, try to jump the snap count, because what's the worst that could happen? You lose an inch. Like, it's not. So I get, but like, there has to be a point at which it goes away, because you can't just endlessly 13, 14 plays in a row just keep going at it, right? Like,
yeah.
Who were the wrestlers back in the day? What's his name? Used to jump from the rafters and like did that like dive.
Oh, there's a bunch of them, the Snuka and everybody else.
No, the tag team guys. They were brothers.
Oh, like the Hardys.
Yeah. The Hardys. They remind me of the Hardys every single time he did that. He was like, oh.
It was awesome.
You know what I find interesting though, this we can put it stir this will go into the pot a little bit here, is that, so if you watch that game, right, before the referee even came out and said that, the broadcast had, what's his name, the referee on there, Gene Steratore, I think it is. Yes. They had or Mike Pereira, one of those referees was on the broadcast. Before they said it live on the field, he actually said it on the broadcast.
Huh.
So he went and said, don't be surprised here if the ref awards a touchdown, because that is a rule saying, if the defense commits, penalties or whatever, the ref can just award a score. And then literally right after, the ref said the warning. So I thought that was actually hysterical, because not only did they just say it on the broadcast, then the ref, the very next play, goes and says it.
Right.
He was probably mic'd on something like that to hear it too. He was like,
it could also be that they were like, they must have been on, like, because he used to be a ref, they had to be thinking about the same thing. So it's amazing how it, like, you're right, to your point, it came up at the exact same time. And right, like, because what would be the alternative? You could just constantly go at it 14 times. They have to have something like that.
Well, and the clock is running too. Like, there was like 2-3 seconds that, so every single time you're losing 2-3 seconds. They lost, like, I think like 14 or 15 seconds on those 3 or 4 plays that they jumped and created penalties.
Also, Tommy, I playing in college, I swear to you, this question came up. We were having some kind of a special teams or a defensive meeting or something, and somebody asked the question. They were like, "Hey, coach, what would happen if, a guy's running down the sideline, he's going to go for the game-winning touchdown, and then like somebody off the sideline just goes and tackles him?" right? Like you got nothing to lose, right? You have nothing to lose at all. What would happen? And then we asked it like we had this meeting with like refs involved, and like the refs were like, if that happens, we could just award them a touchdown
Yeah.
because it's under the act of God thing. Like it's kind of like that. At some point, you need to have something like that.
Wait,
Which is
didn't Mike Tomlin do that?
He stuck his foot out.
oh, I know what
Remember
play you're
that?
talking about. He
Yeah, he
didn't.
stuck his foot out.
He wasn't his like. He was looking at the screen, and his like shoulder was in the way,
No,
causing
Yeah, yeah,
no,
that's,
yeah,
Jacoby Jones to.
that was on
yeah,
purpose.
yeah,
I
no,
don't
no,
care what anyone says.
he was on the field of play though, and he also stuck his foot out just like
He
to
knew
get
what he
that
was
extra.
doing. He knew what he
Yeah,
was
no, of
doing.
course, he was on the field.
It was unbelievable. Yeah. So that was in the NFC. In the AFC, the Chiefs and the Chiefs and the Bills. So whatever you might think about different other aspects of the game, which we're not going to get into. I actually thought it was a really good game. And I think sometimes the media overdoes it with criticism or praise that they heap upon singular players here or there. A lot of people were criticizing Josh Allen, whatever. I thought Josh Allen played a great game. I don't know why he gets some of the criticism that he does. I
Well,
mean,
now they're breaking down the tape even further, and they're showing him some of those points he's pointing out, pass interference and stuff like that, like down the field, and he's actually pointing out the flags that should have been flags, but we're not going to get into that, because we're ready for this Saquon Barkley versus the referees Super Bowl.
yeah, as I recall before we got into this, I thought we were under instructions that I was not going to be making certain snide comments about
That's fine.
defending the thing. So if you want to go there, do you want to go there or not?
I think we should just leave it for what I said.
Yeah. What I was going to
I will say though, Josh Allen, and I think why he's getting the criticism that he's getting is because he actually had some really bad throws in that game as well. He should have had about 3 interceptions, to be honest with you. Some of his throws
right.
really were not that great. Um, so I think everyone kind of, it sucks because he played so great the entire year. You know what I mean? For most of the year, he was pretty much flawless. And especially given the receiving core that he was going into the year with. Everyone kind of doubted him and was like, he's got a bunch of nobodies. How's this going to pan out? And he made it to the AFC Championship. But I think it's just that taking that step to be an even better quarterback when it matters.
Right.
Do you think that he wins MVP still?
I
It's
think
tough.
no, I think that Lamar Jackson wins it because they named him the first team and they named
No,
Josh Allen second team.
Lamar Jackson won Offensive Player of the Year. I thought they
They
named.
name I still think Lamar Jackson wins the MVP because it's the
So you
first
think
team,
that he's
second
going to win
team.
Offensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, and MVP?
I don't know that he won Offensive Player of the Year. I'll check that.
It was announced that he won Offensive Player of the Year because they announced some of the Defensive Player of the Year, stuff like that. Because the biggest thing is the MVP that they announced on that day.
Well, regardless, if you're asking me what it should be, I honestly think Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen should be co-MVPs. Personally, I think their numbers were too close. They're both unbelievable years, too valuable to their team. I will say, by the way, regardless of what you might have think happened in the game, so that I actually sat and watched that fourth down play from the Bills, the one where he heaved it up. First of all, if Dalton Kincaid catches that ball, the Bills win that game. So it's like it was a difficult catch for him not to just completely poop all over Dalton Kincaid. However, they had another guy open on the backside. I'm going to forget the receiver's name. He was wide open. And if
I think
Josh
it was
Allen,
Shakir.
it was Shakir. And if Josh Allen finds him, again, it's the same thing. They'll end up getting the first down and the Bills probably win that game. So it's amazing. Things could go either way. And, to Tommy's dismay, I could point out a whole bunch of calls that could have went the other way too. But I actually think that it was such a great game. And it's unfortunate that I actually think Josh Allen's great. And I think that the criticism he gets sometimes is, to Anthony, to your point, a lot of it probably is legitimate, but not to the degree where it's like, oh, he's completely overrated. He's an awful play. No, he's great. And he's basically carrying the Bills at this point. They got a lot of good players, but he's
And my
basically
apology. My apologies. I thought that they announced a couple of the awards. For some reason, I thought I saw that, but I mistaked that. So,
yeah.
edit.
And to
Oh,
your
it's
point, Billy, that's what's funny is that all these people can be critical and complain, right? But I would love to
right.
have a problem of I have Josh Allen as my quarterback and he can't win an AFC championship game, versus
Right.
not having a quarterback at all, which a lot of these teams are not. Unfortunately, a lot of these teams don't have a star quarterback like Josh Allen. So I feel like he's a good problem to have. I
Yes.
guess you want him to, and we could say the same thing about Lamar Jackson here. When is the last time Lamar Jackson won a big game in the playoffs? I think that's his most critical point too, is that he can't get over that hump and win a playoff game to get to the Super Bowl.
Part of it is
And
that part of it is that Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, they keep trading wins with each other, and then the both of them just go and keep losing to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. So I mean, like at some point, somebody has to go and beat the Chiefs if they
But
actually want to do it. I mean,
I also said, what is the coach's responsibility here too in the play calling? You
you're
know
right.
what I mean? 'Cause I didn't think that the play calling was all that great from
They
the Bills'
abandoned they
perspective.
abandoned they abandoned James Cook too early. You're
Yeah,
right. And
absolutely.
also, there was a few times that I thought they were chasing 2-point conversions and they didn't need
And
to.
that's another thing too. And that I was actually going to touch on that real quick. Is I don't understand where all of a sudden now the 2-point conversion became so prevalent. And this is where I will give credit to the Chiefs. This is why Andy Reid is a smart coach. This is why Andy Reid is a successful coach because he doesn't buy into the bait of say, you go for the field goal and then there's an offside, so we're going to move the ball to the 1 yard line. So
Right.
now all of a sudden let's go for 2-point conversion because the ball's at the one. Andy Reid, whether that happens or not, he sticks to the field goal unless he desperately, unless they're playing from behind or down two.
Situation,
Yeah,
whatever.
situation. But 99% of the time, Andy Reid's gonna say, you know what? I don't care that it's moved. We're just gonna kick the field goal and go along with our business, which what most teams should do.
Yeah.
How many times did the Bills go for 2 points that game? And even Washington in their game.
Right.
Well, yeah, Washington's been doing that all season. They basically went the Dan Campbell way of year last year.
I think the conversion rate was less than 25% between both games on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's just you're leaving too many points off the board, in my opinion. And in the Bills' perspective, that hurt them a lot because what they lose by 3.
Yeah.
Right. Basically.
You
Way to
know,
change the
By
whole
field goal.
tenor of the last couple drives. You're right.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. I mean, there's a lot of fantasy football implications to what ended up happening. I mean, again, like it's just you have Andy Reid, who's just leagues above basically so many other coaches at this point, just with how he
Well, he just
manages the game.
plays
And
he plays situational football. He coaches situational football.
yeah,
So, you
it's
know,
why and again, I
he's an
know Anthony.
offensive mind. He's an offensive minded coach who has a perfect defensive Spagnola back there.
Well, we'll talk about some other coaching changes in a moment, but real quick, let's get you guys so Super Bowl. Let's get some Super Bowl picks. I
Uh,
think I think. Oh, by the way, let me while you guys make a few comments, let me double check the line because it has moved.
I
So
don't have any. I don't
I
have
will
any
make a
comments.
quick comment, even though I know we touched on them already about the running backs. I'm going to be honest with you guys, though. It looks like Kareem Hunt's the better back this postseason for the Chiefs than Pacheco.
absolutely,
Well,
And
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
he's trying to win that Super Bowl.
well, but for fantasy implications, I'm wondering if he actually is going to stay on the team next year.
No, Pacheco's back. Pacheco came back. He was a broken tibia. It was his tibia, fibia. It was like a fracture or something like that.
I think you're right. Yeah, it's taking Isaiah Pacheco a while to
Yeah,
Yeah,
but what do you
it's
have? Also, what do you have to lose bringing Hunt back, though? You know what I mean? If he's not asking for a lot of money, why not as a nice backup?
yeah.
sure.
I mean, but they have a lot of money to pay a lot of those players that got sold on that team during the season. I mean, who knows if
Well,
who
I
knows
think Kelsey retires after this
That's
one.
what I was about to say is, if Kelsey's gone, there frees up some money right there because as we all know, Patrick Mahomes is not the highest paid quarterback in the league. So that
But he
there's
doesn't need to be. I mean,
that's what
he's doing.
I know. But that's what I'm saying is there's a lot of flexibility to fill that roster.
Isn't that funny? The most accomplished quarterback in the league right now is not the highest paid one.
Tom Brady was not the highest paid player in the leagues. It's just a model.
I just don't understand why more players and quarterbacks specifically, because they have the most money, why they don't operate that way. Like, what's the difference between 50 million and 30 million to you if it means that 20 more million is going to go to other players to, you know what I mean? You could get more championships out of it, more. So I just wish I wish they would think like that. Like it's just like it's not that big of a difference to you.
Wouldn't you just wish everybody that's making over $1 million a year think like that? But it just doesn't work like that sometimes.
Yeah. Well, so I gotta look at the line here. So the line hasn't moved from Chiefs -1.5 over the Eagles for the Super Bowl, but the payout has moved slightly. So it means that some of the bigger payments actually went to the Chiefs money line. Now, if I was a betting man, I would take the Chiefs and the spread because I don't think that they're going to win by 1 point. I think that they would win by more than that. But it's pretty simple. The Eagles are, whether we like it or don't like it, the Eagles are a really great team. How they're getting there with tush pushes and Barkley just running for 8,000 yards is another story.
I don't like both sides of it. But again, if we got to pick somebody and honestly, and I've had multiple conversations about this. Obviously being a Giants fan, it's tough. It's tough to see the whole situation with Saquon going over there and just being the greatest running back of all time, like almost
Well,
basically. But I feel for Barkley, and as the season went on, I think that he deserves to be put in a position to win. Does that mean I want to see the Eagles win? No, but if there's anybody that I want to choose, it's Saquon Barkley to win a Super Bowl. I will not say I want the Eagles to win a Super Bowl. I will say I want Saquon Barkley to win a Super Bowl.
I think that if the Chiefs want to win that game, it's going to be because they
shut down.
I don't think they're going to shut them. I don't think he's going to get shut down, but to some degree, slowed him down. Maybe he ends the night with 85 yards. Maybe he had one touchdown. If it's like that, the Chiefs are winning that game. I mean,
well, you look at it from they had Swift. That was
if you had to pick, you think the Eagles are going to win the game?
I think Eagles win.
All right, I would take the Chiefs in the spread. What do you think, Anthony?
Sadly, I think the Chiefs are going to win this one. They're going to get that three-peat.
Okay. Well, we'll find out.
I will say this. I will announce this. I will announce this to the all our subscribers and all our followers and everybody who's watching this right now. I will not bet a money line or spread on this game. Only thing I will bet is a player prop for Barkley. That's about it.
Okay.
Someone put $1 million bet on the Bills last week.
They lost $1 million.
And if the Bills won, they would have won $5.5 million.
Again, it's sometimes the danger of taking the underdog. I mean, it's
yeah. I wish I had that kind of money to throw around like that.
Yeah,
and feel comfortable. I lost $1 million on a bet, whatever.
Hey. Well, as fortuitous, we mentioned the Eagles because we're going to be talking about two of the Eagles players today, actually. So, yeah, let's jump. Actually, before we jump right into wide receivers 13 through 24, let's just make a quick comment on some coaching changes. So they finally did name they did name a Jacksonville head coach in the worst little soundbite I think you could ever hear.
Did you see some of the clips on him though?
Are they as ridiculous as that, or
he just is a weird, wild person? Congratulations, Jacksonville! You fired your GM and you got a weird coach.
I think
they needed to fire their GM though. That guy is not a good GM.
Still,
I think that they're running into disaster with this. If I was Liam Coleman, I would have stayed as the offensive coordinator for the Bucs. He's walking into a disaster there, and I think it's not going to work.
I think the owner over there is watching Jerry Jones run his team to the ground, basically. And that's the Schottenheimer. He literally was like, "We are taking the most risk. We're putting a guy that's never been a head coach before as head coach, and blah 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 blah." Like, dude, stop, leave, go on an island and just leave. Leave it to your son to call it a day.
Imagine you get hired as a head coach, and then you get the owner there just roasting you the whole time in front of a conference.
And Schottenheimer didn't even say it. He was literally there was both Joneses on both sides. He's in the middle, and Jerry Jones is talking for his intro interview.
The way it's crazy. The way I see this going for Dallas. The way I see this going for Dallas now, it's going to end up, in my opinion, it's going to be status quo. I mean, you couldn't get a more status quo kind of guy. He's a decently good offensive coordinator. I mean, it is what it is. Like it, Dak.
Who do we have on the Jets? Was it Marty?
No, it was him.
It was him, right, Brian?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I can
Ryan
remember.
Schottenheimer. Yeah, it's not like he made any gigantic waves. So, whatever. Good for the Cowboys. And I know we already commented on the Patriots situation. We already commented on the
Yeah.
Jets.
It's looking, and it's honestly looking like what's
The
his name?
Bears. Yeah,
Yeah, no, 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 but yeah, we talked about that last week, but
yeah. Yeah.
McCarthy is looking to target on the Saints.
Right.
That's
The Saints is the last job open, right?
yeah,
If
because the Raiders
they hired Pete Carroll,
Pete
right?
Carroll, yeah, Pete Carroll signed basically signed a 3 year with the Raiders.
I feel like the Raiders now, they're going to be just good enough to not be in like the top 10 for picks, but never good enough to make the playoffs now,
I
especially
don't know.
with
I feel like with Pete Carroll there, though, I think things are going to change. I really actually like that hire a lot. It's probably one of my favorite hires, to be honest with
Maybe
you.
maybe
Uh,
maybe since Sam McCormick is the new Marshawn Lynch.
oh, that's how
yeah,
you know it's the end of the empire. You talking
I think if they can get a decent quarterback in there, I think that things are going to change for them. I really do like that hire a lot. Actually, he
Yeah.
was a name that I really wanted on the Jets, but he had no interest in coaching the Jets.
no, and why should he?
I know. I like it. Like I'm excited about it, but it just in general, I think in any of these open positions, I think you want a guy more so with history. You want a guy with a little bit of coaching experience as far as the head coach position goes. You know.
You know what though, Anthony? I am feeling a little bit better about the Aaron Glenn thing. The more and more I sat on it, he seems really, really passionate. I really liked his, some of the press conferences he's had about it. The team seems to be excited about him. The fact that he
Yeah.
was a former player, like it's a different kind of energy.
He
And
walks the walk. He walks the walk.
I,
He's proven himself on the lines on a rebuild.
right,
I mean, what can you ask more?
an offensive minded person. That's really what
Yeah.
Anthony and I were saying. But
Well, yeah, you find
given what it
somebody,
is,
hire somebody.
yeah. All right. Any other points, or jump right into wide receivers here?
Talk about some wide receivers.
Let's talk
Yeah,
about
let's talk about some number 13.
Let's talk about some wide receivers. So on our last week's show, we covered wide receivers 1 to 12. Just as a quick reminder, that's Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brian Thomas Jr., CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, Malik Neighbors, JSN, aka Jackson Smith and Jigma, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Mike Evans, and Judge Judy, Jerry Judy himself. And so we'll be kicking off 13 to 24 wide receivers. Coming in at number 13 from 2024 season, we have Ladidi Metcalfe, aka Lad McConkey,
Mr. Georgia Bulldog.
star rookie wide receiver for the LA Chargers. Really a revelation. It took him a while to get going, but once he did, he didn't look back. Finished with 185 points, just a point behind Judge Judy, and he missed the game. Really, after week 6, week 7, it was really, really great after that. Once and again, we talked about the Chargers this year. Once Harbaugh started abandoning slightly his I'm going to run it and play defense every play of the game, and now we're going to start opening up and throwing it with Justin Herbert. Once that happened, which happened right around that time, Lad basically took off. Of all the 3 rookie wide receivers who crushed it, which was Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, and Lad McConkey, I'm the most excited about Lad McConkey going into next year. How about you guys?
Yeah, he might have led you to a Super Bowl championship.
Oh man,
Ah,
allow that to go. What do you think,
yeah.
Anthony?
Yeah, I could see him easily getting bumped up into the top 10 next year. I definitely am excited for him, and I still would like the Chargers to get another weapon over there.
Right.
And I still think that'll make things even better for him, for Lad. But given what he did with the current wide receiver roster they had there, just phenomenal, and very excited about him for years to come, especially in PPR formats.
Yeah, I mean, he finished off at the number 24 based on targets. Obviously finishing off at the number 13. He had 104 targets for 77 receptions, broke 1,000 yards in his rookie year, and having 7 touchdowns. And the crazy thing, is he had some of these explosive big runs as well, receptions at 20 plus yards, 14 total 20 plus yards. plays. So those especially if you're playing in leagues where you get bonuses on these extended plays, he's definitely a very, very lucrative receiver to have and to look at next year. I think that this is only the beginning for him.
I mean, it really was great. I mean, you drafted him as the wide receiver 45. He was a reception machine. So, I mean, he even
And
gets
it
more
would
of a
have
bump up for PPR.
and it would have
And
been a lot higher, honestly, if they were throwing the ball sooner, in the
that's right.
season, went. Kind of player he reminds me of because of his toughness and his elusiveness is kind of like a Wes Welker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good comparison.
Yeah. So I
And I,
mean,
and I think,
you
and I
remember
think
you
it'll,
remember Wes Welker, his numbers for a number of seasons, he was a great he was a great receiver to have on your fantasy roster. So um I'm leaning the lad.
I think, and Anthony, I agree with you. It'll be interesting to see if the Chargers do bring in some kind of a wide receiver, whether it's DK Metcalf and it's somebody else. Um, I don't think that affects Lad McConkey at all. I think Lad McConkey's role is pretty static now in the
Yeah,
offense. If anything, Quentin Johnston, he'll be the one that just gets the boot if they end up doing that.
yeah.
Uh, if
Because
not,
what is it? Lad plays out of the slot, right? If I'm correct.
exactly. That's
He'll
his
Yeah,
move
role.
so I
around.
mean that's where he's going to thrive, and I can't see him playing the outside, to be honest with you. So that's why I think that if they bring in another receiver, his numbers are just going to be that much better.
Yeah, no, he's a possession receiver. He's a thrasher, so I think, and he's really tough. So I think he's definitely somebody to look at next year. And yeah, I think he's gonna overproduce. He's gonna probably be targeted as not even the 13th next year. I think he's gonna be a top 15, 16, which is close relevant to where he finished off. But I think he's gonna be the 15th or 16th receiver off the board next year, and that's gonna be great value.
We'll see how ADP shakes up. We'll probably have a lot to say about him um,
Yep.
going into draft season. All right, let's move on to number 14, and we'll lump in two guys here. So coming in at number 14 was AJ Brown, and we'll also lump in coming in at number 24 was Devontae Smith. We'll talk about them together. So AJ Brown finishing with 183 points, just a few points behind Lad McConkey, and Devontae Smith finishing with 165 points, about 20 points behind the list there. So AJ Brown, the finish on the season doesn't tell the whole story because he missed 3 games right in the beginning of the year.
Same thing
So,
with Devontae. He missed 3 games too throughout the year.
and Devontae missed
Three
one
games.
game in the beginning and then 2 games. Right. So they both missed 3 games. Both of their averages are significantly higher. They both would have finished top 10 if they would have played throughout the year on the pace that they had. So you felt really great when you played AJ Brown, minus those injuries. I don't really know what AJ Brown's problem was with their whole passing offense. They kept winning and winning anyway, and they're ending up in the Super Bowl. So I feel like he should just relax. And he still had a great year anyway. Devontae
Well,
Smith,
they're in
yeah,
the Super Bowl because of that rushing game.
right? But I mean, go get your
Nobody
wins.
was able to stop it. Nobody could stop it. If you can't stop the rushing, yes, is he complaining? But the crazy thing about it though, he was complaining about that. There was 1 week after that. Saquon Barkley came out and was like, "Hey, he's a big team player. He's not looking to catch the ball. He's down the field blocking. Like so, like I don't know if again the media shook it up a little bit more than what actually it was. I mean, yes, he's reading a book on the sideline, um, but um, you know, he definitely outperformed our favorite guy we spoke about all season, DK Metcalf, who is his AKA buddy right over there. They played in the same team for college. I mean, they're kind of the same stature, and I'd go AJ all day. A healthy AJ is a profitable AJ for fantasy
Well,
football.
I mean, AJ Brown, like obviously, other than the games that he missed in the beginning of the year, he didn't kill you. There was maybe one, maybe 2 games where it was bad, but other than that, he was great for every game that he played. Devontae Smith, though, he was very inconsistent. Um, Couple games where he kind of fell off the map. But
Well,
I think part and parcel of this just the Eagles' rushing attack. Like, I mean, they just didn't need to pass the ball that much, and the number two
again,
wide receiver is going to take the biggest hit there.
his ADP was 23. He finished off at 24, so he actually
Right?
he was
It's
around ADP.
right,
So
but
you knew what you were getting as a Devonta Smith at that point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I didn't mention that. So AJ Brown, you drafted him as the wide receiver six, finished at the wide receiver 14. But like I said, his finish, like he felt better than what it was given the games that he missed. I don't know if it definitely wasn't worth the wide receiver six
Yeah,
pick.
yeah, but and if you
But
look at the specs, if you look at the specs where he basically, if he had a 20-point game, if he was healthy all season, he had a 20-point game, then he had a 15-point game, maybe he had a 6-point game in one of those injuries, then you were talking about he's in the top 12 and he's close to where his ADP was.
yeah,
Closer.
it wouldn't have felt as good though. But you're right, it would have felt a little better.
No, the big thing is Devonta Smith. Even with those 3 games missed, he's finished off at 24 and he was the 23rd. So I don't think it was a bad season. You drafted for what you got. I've always leaned AJ Brown over Devonta Smith, but
Oh, obviously.
I look at Devonta Smith as a flex play every single year, and he produced as a wide receiver too, low end of wide receiver too.
I think I don't have his yearly finishes in front of me, but I mean Devonte Smith has consistently been a wide receiver two basically since his inception, especially now and he managed to sneak in there this past year, especially now going into next year. The way that the Eagles offense has evolved, Devonte Smith will I have a feeling he's going to be off my board because the name just increases his ADP. I'm not going to be interested in having him as a wide receiver two next year. I'll
So
be
23 he finished 19, 22 he finished 9, and 21 he finished 30. Um, so he's
right.
he's
I
he's
mean,
definitely he's definitely he basically went back his 20 from 2024 season, he went back to his 2021 season, which pretty much was what it was. Um, and but again, he was drafted in his position to be that wide receiver two. But again, I don't believe he's a wide receiver two. He's always been a flex or wide receiver three.
Anthony, let me ask you this because this will come down to other conversations we have in the offseason. Like, I guess maybe it depends on how the Super Bowl goes to some degree, but like, Saquon right now in his early ahead of the year rankings, like on if you go look on Underdog, etc., he's being drafted as the number one running back. Um, you know, are we just assuming the Eagles offense looks very similar to what it is, or do they lean a little less on Saquon? I mean, like,
So I feel like AJ Brown could potentially be a perfect trade candidate this offseason. And the only reason I say that is because obviously the whole tension that there was, midseason, and like I said, him complaining about not getting the ball, and him and Hurts don't get along, and I just, it's either one of those things where they tell him, hey, look, this formula we have is working, and we're going to continue on with this formula, and you just have to suck it up and deal with it. I can't see them going away from Saquon Barkley and using him less. I
No,
wouldn't see why
he's
you would do that.
they,
Um,
they they signed him for that model to be that corner piece.
But I could easily see AJ Brown, possibly being some sort of trade candidate, especially if he's not happy in his current situation and he's going to want the ball more. I feel like they're going to rely on the run just as much next year as they did this year, and for good reason. I mean, there's no reason to shy away from it.
And do you think maybe DK Metcalf gets traded to the Eagles and AJ Brown goes out to Seattle?
I mean, that'd be hilarious, but he would have opportunity there, though, to catch passes. I mean, they throw the ball a lot. Remember, Geno Smith led in pass attempts, so it
he
wouldn't
did.
necessarily be a bad thing for him, just not a winning culture, where he's coming from on the Eagles. But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, in my opinion.
I honestly think if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, their team is staying together. There's no they'll run it back. They'll just continue. They'll try to continue to run it
I
back.
I agree 100%. I think the Super Bowl matters 100% with how this looks. If they don't win, I agree with Anthony. AJ Brown's going to get out.
I don't think I think the percentage of him getting traded or leaving or something like that is probably about a 40% chance if they lose the Super Bowl. If
I'll
they
tell you that.
win, it's a 100% chance he stays.
I'll tell you this: if AJ
I agree
Brown
with
gets
that.
traded, like the way that I'll feel about Devontae Smith changes 100%. He goes back to being a wide receiver, a
Not the
clear.
same player. He's not the same. I think maybe he just gets bumped up to a middle grade wide receiver too.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. I'd feel happy to draft him as like wide receiver 20 at that point versus, or maybe even slightly higher versus Like, okay, he finished as wide receiver 24. If everything stays status quo with the Eagles next year, no way I'm drafting him there. No
Well,
way.
I'll tell you. I mean, there was a lot of injuries this year. I think if anything, with everybody, if it's a perfect season, people don't get injured. This, that. I mean, it's not going to happen. But if it's a perfect season and people don't get injured, Devonta Smith would have finished in like the 30s.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know if I would take him as a wide receiver too. Even if without that, I think that's actually worse for his production for next year.
I
If that's
will.
I
I'll
mean,
be
yes,
putting together.
was
I'll be putting together like his. If that ends up happening, I'll put together like his stats or whatever. Like looking at him without AJ
Devonta
Brown,
Smith.
etc.
Devonta Smith won the Heisman when he was at Alabama, right? He's a
Right.
Heisman. He's a Heisman, wide receiver. What happened in
Right.
college is different, but the fact is he has a talent to be that. But I just don't think he has a stature. He's not that has a size to actually be that number one receiver in the
AJ
NFL.
Brown is still on the Eagles next year. He's still a top 10 receiver for you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. Okay.
even with less targets, he still can make things happen.
Yeah, because he is their primary target.
Let's move it on. Let's move it on to number 15. This one was a big surprise. So Cortland
Yeah.
Sutton finishing at number 15, 181.5 points, just a few points behind AJ Brown. You drafted him as the wide receiver 47. He was unbelievable. And basically, week 3 on, maybe throw in 1 or 2 weeks in there that you were kind of unhappy. Actually, let me point out, after week 3, he goes 10.3 points, week 4, 13.5. I remember myself thinking that this was a mirage. He ends up goosing it in week 7. After that, from week 8 on, he was something like the wide receiver 4 for the rest of the year. It was really, really an awesome year. And it's part and parcel to Bo Nix breaking every single expectation that we had.
Yeah.
Sean Payton's
Bo Nix,
offense doing it. Yeah, go ahead.
Bo Nix really took it off. I mean, yes, he was playing more controlled. They were playing him more of a controlled, confining him in their offense early on, and then they basically released him as the season went on. So midway point through the season, that's when he was making those big bomb plays.
And
With
if you
Mims,
remember,
obviously,
Cortland
good.
Sutton was a he was a trade candidate for the Broncos. But then
Yeah.
eventually it looked like Bo Nix was like lighting it up, and Sutton's his favorite target,
And they
and
were,
so they
yeah,
they stuck with it. Yeah,
and they were on a playoff push, so they couldn't shatter anything they had going on there.
right. But really a great year. I'm most concerned about the fact that he was a trade candidate this year. I wonder what his future is going to be in Denver next year. He'll be highly drafted, but maybe he won't last for the end of next year. Maybe he ends up getting
No,
traded. I
I
mean,
don't think I think he's going to finish. He might finish his career there. He could be a staple point for a Bo Nix, for that young quarterback to basically have a centerpiece on that offense. So I think that, yes, things change on a fly sometimes. When you're starting to win games and you don't want to shake things up too much. If they traded him, they probably would not have made the playoff. Um, Even with Bo Nix playing out of his mind, I think he was a main piece because they couldn't figure out their running back situation there.
that's true. If
So
they're able to run the ball better, it'll change their
yeah.
passing situation. Right.
So I think if anything, he'll remain on that roster, and I think people are gonna kind of like overdraft him. I think he is a low end wide receiver too going into next year. Maybe midpoint wide receiver too. So he's gonna finish off around the same thing he finished off this year. But I think some people are gonna really like look at him as, all right, well, he's now the wide receiver 1. He might have some wide receiver number 1 weeks, but he's not gonna have those consistent wide receiver 1 weeks.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I mean, I feel like, especially because he built such a good rapport with Bo Nix this past season, that why ruin that and why change that? You get your
Yeah.
quarterback comfortable. They have a great connection, and if I'm Sutton at this point, I'm advocating to stay there then because I mean I'm sure he appreciates that relationship that they've built, and he knows that he's going to get the ball a lot. Which is what a lot of these guys want.
they have some good wide receiver, like some younger talent there
They
under
do, but it's hard
Vele
to trust
Mims.
because Vele was rocking it for a few weeks, and all of a sudden it just switched to Mims, and he was the hot hand for the end of the season. So it's
Rich
hard to see.
Franklin.
Yeah, it's hard to see like which one of those guys are going to be the clear cut number two. At least we know Sutton's the clear cut number one there. There's no debate in there. It's just who's going to step up and be that number two.
How old is Cortland Sutton going into next year? I'm like,
I
he's getting a little up there now.
I mean, he's not high up there. I think he's in his high
I,
20s.
I think he's like
I'll
20,
check.
29 or something.
He is 29.
29. So he'll be
So
30 next
next year
year,
will be
right?
his 30 season. Yeah.
Right. So it's worth keeping in mind. I mean, we'll
Well,
judge it
again,
as
that's the big thing we were discussing early in the season is, obviously your handcuffs, and I think Vele is his handcuff. If he gets injured, if he
oh.
goes down, Vele is the guy that's basically going to take that role. Um, so,
He's definitely worth it's definitely worth a consideration. But I mean,
Yeah.
just judging by how it was in 2024, and Bo Nix presumably is only going to improve hopefully from an efficiency standpoint. So maybe they do run the ball a little bit better, but he gets more efficient. So it kind of balances out. So let's move on to what's going to be a horrific name for me and Anthony here. So coming in at number 16 is Devontae Adams. Ugh, a wide receiver for the New York Jets, finishing with 181 points. So you drafted him as the wide receiver 10. He missed 3 games earlier in the year, but towards the end of the year, he was one of, if not the best wide receivers in fantasy football. Anthony, take it away. I mean, how do you even characterize this? How do they go into next year? Is this the end of the line? What do you think? Like,
Well, I think it just all depends on what Aaron Rodgers does. And like we talked about earlier, I think the best thing for both sides is for Aaron Rodgers to come back. I think that's what's best for him, and I think that's what's best for the Jets, as much as I hate to admit that. And I think you ride this out one more year, and it give you an opportunity to also possibly draft someone in this coming draft as well, quarterback wise. Um, I, if Rodgers comes back, then I see Adams back, obviously, with the Jets. Um, if Rodgers leaves, I don't think the Jets stick with Adams. I don't think Adams
no,
wants
he's
to
gone.
stay there. I think he's gone. Where he goes, I have no idea. But if Rodgers stays, I think he could be in for a decent year next year. I do. I mean, they
I
showed
agree.
flashes at the end. I think Rodgers did get a little bit better at the end. And I think if we could just get a consistent offensive coordinator, I think that could also help elevate Rodgers a little bit and just the team overall. And I could see him having a better year next year if he comes back.
if
You
Aaron
know, you
Rodgers
know,
comes back, where do you see him being? Where would you draft him? Somewhere in the top 12?
yeah,
Rodgers or Adams?
Adams.
I was like Rodgers. No, Adams top 12. I don't know if I'd finish. I don't know if I'd
I'd take
draft
him
him
in
in
the
the
top
top
12.
12.
I'd
I
take
don't
him
know
in the top
about.
12.
I don't know about that. Would it be close? Yes, it would be close. It'd be up there.
I think he'd be right
I,
around
I,
there. Yeah.
I honestly, I got to be honest. If Aaron Rodgers, I mean, I think the likeliness of Aaron Rodgers being on the Jets next year now is about 95%. I mean, unless he comes out and he's going to retire, that's the only thing that's going to take him away at this point. I think because he has one more year in his term. I think you guys also are, being Jets fans, you're in a win now kind of situation. You thought it was going to be 2 years ago, then that injury happens, and he comes back and he doesn't look great in the beginning, and he starts showing flashes of greatness throughout the season as the season progresses. And it's honestly a lot of it, yeah, maybe his psyche, he's not showing it, but I will tell you right now an injury like that coming off of that, and maybe with the type of surgery he had, yes, he was on his feet and moving around faster and faster. Maybe actually the rehabilitation to actually get back to his performing level of what he is, an MVP, kind of caliber player. Even I don't care how old that guy is. He's still a great player. He's so smart. He knows how to make plays.
Right.
And especially when you have a Devontae Adams, that you have that connection. It's like kind of like you go back to the Jamar Chase and the Burrow situation. They've been playing together for years. They had to get back on that same step. They
Well,
started getting back on that same step as the year progressed.
I
I
mean,
really think personally, I think Devontae Adams finishes in the top 5 next year if they're both together.
you might be right. I mean, it's a smaller sample size, but like after the bye week that they had in week 12, so from weeks 13 through 17, he was the wide receiver 2. So
Yeah.
I mean, it was really unbelievable. I mean, and it felt like that
And we were at
they
that,
had unlocked something.
and we were at that week 15 game. We were
Right, where
there.
he scores 38 points.
That explosive game.
Right, but I don't want to poo-poo what happened earlier in the season because Rodgers was the quarterback. So Davante, he missed 3 games, but even in the games that he played, he was very inconsistent. 8 points, 21 points, 6 points, misses 3 games, 4 points, 7 points, 18 points. You know what I'm saying? Like
he was on the Raiders. He was on the Raiders at that point.
What I'm saying is that okay, wait, when did he get traded to the Jets? It was week 8, I believe. 7 points.
It was right after the Buffalo game.
Right.
Yeah.
18 points.
He didn't he have a touchdown? That was it. He had that touchdown.
I'm just saying that
what I'm saying is they eased them into the system. They didn't throw him out there and be like, all right, 100% snap. No, he basically eased himself in until basically that bye week. He was probably running 100% snaps after the bye week.
What I'm saying to you, I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is to just extrapolate the last 5 weeks of the season across all of 2025 coming up. I don't know if like that would be a ceiling. That would be a ceiling situation. So I don't know if I would be as bullish as you as that, but if even remotely, if they have the same kind of connection and they're at the same energy, I mean, it's going to be some of that at least.
But here's the thing. All right. So week seven is when he was acquired by the Jets. Yep. He did have a 96% snap, but again, got to remember, it's the connection. Basically, he was targeted 9 times. He was targeted 9 times. He had 3 receptions for 30 yards. Then week 8, he had 6 targets, 4 receptions, 54 yards. 11 targets the next game. 13 targets, 7 targets, 12 targets, 11 targets, 12 targets, 13, 8. Take the targets going into next year. Aaron, especially if for some reason Garrett Wilson is really going with what his mind is being on a different team if Aaron Rodgers is there, that's even better for Davante Adams. Allen Lazard will still be there. You'll still have some of those other guys that are back there, Gibson, but Davante is going to be that big target guy.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where his ADP falls. It's all dependent on whatever Aaron Rodgers does, to me and Anthony's lament. So let's move on. We've got Jordan Addison coming in at number 17. He missed a lot. He missed a couple games in there, but you drafted him as the wide receiver 43, coming off a really bad 2023 season. But he comes back in 2024. And really, towards the second half of the year, really lights it up. I mean, he had 1 or 2 games in the first half of the year that were good / great. Second half of the year, he was unbelievable. Was a major contributing factor into you winning your league if you had him on it. Really, we talked about Justin Jefferson last week. I think a lot of the future of Jordan Addison depends upon whatever goes on with the Vikings and Sam Darnold. I actually think the Vikings are in for a regression next year. Basically just the way how badly they ended the season. It was really unfortunate.
I think it just depends on what happens. The offseason is going to be the tail of the tape. But you guys know I'm not a big Jordan Addison guy. I mean, he reminds me of like investing in crypto. You don't know if you're going to win a lot today or if you're going to lose everything.
Here's a good take for you. You guys tell me if you agree. So the way I see the Vikings next year, Sam Darnold is going to be the starting quarterback. At some point, whether he gets traded or whether something is going to happen in which JJ McCarthy takes over. I told you guys in our last episode that I felt that Justin Jefferson is quarterback agnostic. Justin Jefferson is going to be great no matter who's the quarterback. If JJ McCarthy takes over, I think Jordan Addison's value goes to almost nothing. Is that
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess we'll see. We'll see, because honestly, if JJ McCarthy is a quarterback there next year, he wasn't throwing for 300 plus yards in Michigan. They were running the ball like beasts, right. So controlling the game. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, let's move it on. Finishing at number 8. This will be contentious.
This is a universal favorite gentleman.
Yeah, finishing at number 18, T. Higgins, finishing with
Buddy.
178 points, just behind Jordan Addison. You drafted him as the wide receiver 27, but let's just point something out. So he finishes the wide receiver 18, but his average was 16.2 points. He missed 5 games this year. His average would basically put him as the wide receiver 3 finishing.
Yep.
But case in point, this is why I've said to Tommy for however many years, T. Higgins is my least favorite fantasy football player of all time because
That's cool. You know what? You know the greatest thing about that, everybody, is that he'll never draft him. So that leaves in 12-team leagues, if you're ever in Billy's league, that leaves at least 10 more people that will potentially draft him. It won't be 11 people. So it's perfect. Your odds are actually getting better.
But this is my point, is that he's so great when he plays and when he doesn't like play for a snap and have a hamstring issue and come off the field, because when he's healthy and he plays the game, it's unbelievable. It's 24 points in week 5. It's 25 points in week 11.
I'll tell you this, Billy. I'll take him over DK. You know what the thing about T. Higgins is? T. Higgins, if he's injured, he's not playing. If he's healthy, he's playing and he's scoring.
Right, but sometimes he gets injured so often in the game that he then comes out of the game.
Well, I mean, he's still putting up at least 3 points, 3.3 points, where DK's spent collecting points in the tank.
Let me ask you this, okay? So he, like I said, his average for when the games that you would actually have played him, he would have finished as the wide receiver 3. You're telling me, obviously, you're not drafting him as the wide receiver 3. Would you draft him as a top 12 wide receiver?
No, he's not. All right. So T. Higgins, I probably say between 15 to 18 is my range for him next year.
So if his ADP is wide receiver 20, you'll be all in.
Again, it also depends on, because the Bengals have a lot of decisions to make this offseason. They have to most likely pay a lot of money to Ja'Marr Chase this year, and same thing with T. Higgins. So there's a lot of decisions that are going to be made. T. Higgins made it very clear he doesn't want to be franchised. He wants that long-term contract, and Ja'Marr Chase wants to break records as well. So there's going to be a lot of money that's thrown out there, and I think that's another thing. Like when we're talking about Chase, the running back over there, I think that's going to be good for them to hold on to, because I think they could probably just get rid of the Moss contract and they hold on to Chase, and that opens up more space, more cap space for both of those players to be signed. They want to play together. So I think if he stays on the Bengals, he's a anywhere from 14 to 16 ADP, wide receiver, which basically puts you at the back end. Actually, the front end of the 3rd round.
Anthony, are you as bullish as he is?
So here's my thing, and I want to get your guys' take on it real quick. Say if T. Higgins remained healthy, right? Doesn't get hurt, and you can count on him for playing. Well, say he plays at least 15, 16 games, right? Would it be a situation where you could see yourself starting him and Ja'Marr Chase on your rosters in the 1 and 2 receivers, like we can do with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, the running backs on the Lions?
I mean, it's
absolutely. But if you're the person drafting Chase, to some degree, unless Higgins were to fall so far, you should be kind of trying to diversify a little bit as you're drafting.
No, right? I agree, but I'm just saying, like, that's pretty much how good Higgins is, though. That you could literally start both of them on the same team and know you're going to get consistent points out of them. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with his contract. I really do believe he's probably going to end up elsewhere. I mean, I think it's in their best interest to stay in Cincinnati, but I could see him very well ending up elsewhere.
No, I don't think so. I think they saw what they lost. I think that they saw what they lost in Tyler Boyd, and Tyler Boyd doing nothing on the Tennessee Titans. Yes,
yeah, he went to a bad team. I mean, if he can get the right fit for him, I think he has the potential to really thrive. And I'm sure, like anybody else, wants to eventually become a high-paid wide receiver.
Yeah. I mean, but.
Remember, the Jets were rumored to trade for him this past offseason and offer him a contract. They didn't, but
I know the amount of Jets rumors that came and didn't come to fruition. Well, it'll be interesting
No,
to
but
see.
see, like, what, you know, well, actually, no, that wouldn't be a good fit for him because Harbaugh likes to run the ball. So I was going to say, you know, he could be a possible potential suitor for the Chargers for
Well, if they're opening
spot
it
there.
up, then I mean, maybe. Um, but like to T Higgins though, like he's with what's he's not number one, but Joe Burrow's number two to number three or four best wide quarterback in the league. If he moves away from Joe Burrow, all of our good feelings about him maybe drop
Oh,
significantly.
I agree.
I
I
mean,
agree. That's what I'm saying. He has to find the right situation, which is kind of slim right now in the NFL landscape. Uh, you know, the other option could be I mean, maybe he's someone that could go to the Bills. You know, maybe
maybe.
they're not necessarily happy with their receiving core and say, you know what, let's upgrade Josh Allen and put T Higgins there. Who knows?
It'll be interesting to see how they handle their contracts this offseason. Our conversation will be predicated on that. Let's move on to number 19, Jameson Williams. Finishing just a few points behind T Higgins. You drafted Jameson Williams as the wide receiver 26, and I mean he finished at 19. So I mean he really came through for you. He missed a few games, but Jameson Williams, was very, very inconsistent. I mean, 21 points, 11 points, 0.7 points, 15 points. I mean, like it was a lot of up and down. It got a lot better towards the end of the season, as we approach the end of the season. Coincidentally, happening when David Montgomery goes down. So when they're running the ball a little bit less, Jared Goff is airing it out just a little bit more. I mean, I'm going to see Jameson Williams is basically the same next year. He's a mid to low end wide receiver two with a wide receiver, top end wide receiver two, maybe wide receiver one upside, depending on if Detroit wants to air it out a little bit more. I know that Detroit's committed to running the ball with, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, but really was a good season otherwise for Jameson Williams, especially where you drafted him, right? I guess, a
Yeah,
little
I
boom
agree with
busty,
that.
but
I don't like how they used him for trick plays in the playoff game, but other than
yeah,
that,
well,
I think he had a pretty a pretty good year given what you drafted him for.
right. By the way, I should mention just on the math of it. This is a perfect example. You guys are noticing me saying, "Hey, this guy's just a few points behind this guy. This is a few points behind this guy." We'll get into this more in the offseason about the math about where we draft running backs and wide receivers. But just wanted to touch upon it now, and we'll touch upon it more next week. Where this is why you hammer home the top end running backs at the top of your draft, because as the running back value drops so significantly, and on top of the fact that the supply and demand for running backs is so much more confined, you're finding so many more wide receivers who are kind of in the same range of outcomes that it becomes so much more worth it to get your running backs out the way and now take your shots on wide receivers going forward. And this is a perfect example of it. You find guys who are just getting boom or bust for you as we move on. All right, so let's move on to finishing at number 20. So this is a major bust candidate here. So Tyreek Hill finishing at wide receiver 20 with 174 points. You drafted him as the wide receiver one, so not a good year for Tyreek Hill, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it was a really bad year. I mean, obviously, so week one he gets detained by the cops about 3 hours before the game starts, and he puts up a 22.5 week. And then after that, it kind of just went to he was not a wide receiver one. I got to be honest, especially how the season ended for him. He wants out. I don't know if. Man, it just kind of reminds me of like an Antonio Brown exit kind of thing. And I just really hope, with his talent and all that stuff, I just hope that he finds a home that actually, does him right. And, I'm not saying that the Dolphins haven't done him right, but I mean, they have so many problems, and they have the potential to be such a great team. Um, but I just don't think it's a good fit for him there anymore, and he needs to find himself on another roster, maybe a little bit more structure. Um, and if he's in a good situation, yeah, I could see him being, finishing in the top 12, but I just don't see that for him anymore. I just don't believe that he is that player unless he's put in that position.
I think he's still as talented. I think that's the problem
He's
is that
definitely talented. He's
they're
definitely
over.
talented. I
They're
just
going to
think
be
he needs more structure.
Yeah, he needs a quarterback who could, a better offensive mind coach and a quarterback who could throw it a little bit farther. Maybe somebody like Patrick Mahomes.
Well, I
Oh,
don't think I think Tua was able to. He thrived when Tua was healthy. The problem is
right.
we don't know much longer Tua is going to stay healthy for, how much longer he even has in his career at this point, because he's one concussion away from, ending his football career. And I think that's another big thing for Tyreek is, you're playing every game not knowing what's going to happen, and it's with all these guys, but necessarily his numbers took a hit, and he knows his numbers took a hit, and it showed when Tua was definitely not in the game, especially
I
he wasn't even really part of the game plan. So I
You
yeah,
know,
I
you
agree
know,
with Tommy. I
Anthony,
agree with you.
Anthony, if you remember, like when Tua came back from the injury, who were we talking about? We're amazed at every single week after Tua came back was John Smith. What Miami
Yeah.
his yards per attempt Tua went down significantly, which tells us that they were over protecting Tua. Like get the ball out of his hands, get the ball out of his
Yeah.
hands because God forbid he gets a concussion. God forbid he gets a concussion. I mean, you can't do that endlessly.
Yeah.
This situation with Tua and the concussions and everything else cannot continue forever. So
so so I think I honestly, and I'm just gonna put this out there, because I think that this might be a good landing spot for Tyreek Hill. Um, I think that he gets traded. I don't know what his contract situation is right now, but I think he signed a 3 year, what, last year extension? I think it was.
something like that.
I think he gets traded to LA. I think he goes to the Chargers. I think that would be a huge, huge splash for the Chargers.
Absolutely.
And with having Lamb McConkey, having the outside of Quentin Johnson, who may catch the ball this week, or Joshua Palmer, who also might catch the ball this week, or a Rodham Disley kind of guy over there, and then that running game over there with Herbert, that could be and that coaching element over there. Billy, can you pronounce it for me, please?
Mike, you talking about the Miami coach, Mike McDaniel? Yes.
No, 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 no. We're talking about the Chargers, so you're not listening to me. Anyway,
Oh,
it's
Jim Harbaugh. No,
Jim
I am listening
Harbaugh.
to you.
Say Jim
It's
Harbaugh.
amazing to me because I can't imagine you can't pronounce this name.
Harbaugh. Harbaugh.
Yeah.
See, I could see
It
him
would.
going to a team like the Patriots.
Nah.
Let me tell you this though. I mean, we could
Honestly,
speculate, and it's
honestly, if Vrabel, Vrabel, another one, if he couldn't deal with AJ Brown's antics, he's not dealing with Tyreek Hill's antics.
I'll tell you this. Like we could waste time speculating about what he ends up doing. I'll
Or
just say like
pronouncing coaches' names.
if Tyreek Hill is back in Miami with the same kind of situation, I think he'll be off my board too because I don't see him finishing in the top 12, and he's going to be drafted there. Um,
He has
yeah,
to be. He's not going to finish in the top 12 anymore. While he's on Miami, he has to be put into a better situation. I think that the Chargers are probably the best situation for him. I
yep,
mean, there are other situations, but I think that's the most consistent, reliable situation for him to be a top 12 wide
yep.
receiver again.
I
Let
think Hill being traded is the best thing for him, and I think it's the best thing for Jaden Waddle.
let's
And
let's
Johnny Smith.
well, it's Jalen Waddle we will not be talking about today. Let's move on to number
Gonna
21.
waddle his way out of this conversation.
So finishing at number 21 is DJ Moore, finishing just a few points behind Tyreek Hill. Now, DJ Moore is interesting. You drafted him as the wide receiver 18, finishing at 21. So, I mean, he didn't kill you, but it's worth noting that he played the entire season. So, his average is as low as you felt it. Um, Although it did get better kind of towards the second half of the season when Caleb Williams started basically just chucking the ball a little bit and getting sacked every other play, but he would chuck it every other play. I mean, it coincided with Keenan Allen having a really good second half of the season too. I think DJ Moore is in line for better stuff next year if Caleb Williams is looking to improve. And I know that Ben Johnson's the coach now, so hopefully this is all improvements, all green flags for DJ Moore next year. We think.
Yeah, I mean, he's your low end wide receiver too.
That's your
I think
go-to
I,
low
I
end
I'm
wide receiver too. That's your everybody.
I think it's more we have to kind of wait and see. I want to give it a year to see what Ben Johnson does with Caleb Williams, because I mean everything all is going to fall on Caleb Williams, what he's going to do and how he's going to be able to perform. So, decent numbers this year with a rookie quarterback. You hope that it gets better from here on out. The hiring of Ben Johnson, that should happen on paper. Will it happen? We don't know. Yeah, I could see him being a safe wide receiver too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can't.
Let's
I
just
don't
put
think
it
it
this
could
way:
get. I don't think it could get worse than this year. I mean,
let's just put it this way: if you go running back strategy and you go and you take DJ Moore as your running back one, I mean your wide receiver one, good luck.
right, but I mean, you might have. I mean, other guys might be off the board. You take what you could get.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. We'll check out his ADP in the offseason and we'll judge. I mean, we're in the same agreement. He's somewhere in the wide receiver 2 range. We'll see how high his ADP is. I think he has significant upside, so maybe he'll be higher on my
And
board.
that's what I'm hoping too. Yeah, I agree with you, Billy. Like, I'm hoping that he takes that another jump this year. And look at Ben Johnson did great things with Jared Goff while he was there. Completely
Yep.
opened him up and revamped him as a quarterback. So, hopefully good
Caleb,
things are coming for Caleb.
Caleb's got to want to learn, so we'll see.
Well, uh, next up, finishing at number 22, Zay Flowers, finishing just a few points behind DJ Moore. You drafted Zay Flowers as the wide receiver 28, finishes at 22, so he came through for you. Um, you know, kind of a halfway inconsistent season. I mean, he had some blow up weeks, he had some real bust weeks. He had 1 week where he put up 27 points, but every other week after that, he never eclipsed 17 or 18 points. Like I said, he had some bust weeks in there, but I mean, that's what you're getting at is Zay Flowers in a Lamar Jackson offense in which, and a Derrick Henry offense in which you're running the ball as much as you are with Lamar and with Derrick Henry. The passing volume is going to be to some degree lower. So this is the kind of thing you're expecting, but he is the clear wide receiver one. Um, I'm expecting more of the same for
Well,
next year.
well, weeks 1 through 13, he was the number 9 wide receiver throughout the year, and we battled this all season. But he didn't come up. He came up short in the end when you needed him the most. So he's a wide receiver 2, flex play all day long.
I think you're
So
being a little mean. I would not consider it like he's a wide
Being
receiver too.
mean,
You're playing, you're
being
playing,
mean.
you're playing him. I mean, it's not gonna.
No,
I mean, why would the situation
I'm
be
just
any
I'm just
different
telling
this year?
you just how they play that game is they run the ball. If they're gonna run the ball and they have to control the ball, they ain't throwing the ball.
So
Right.
with my stubbornness, and this is just my pure opinion, is I stay away from Baltimore wide receivers like I do with Patriot running backs, just because it's so inconsistent, in my opinion.
Yep.
You're Billy, you're right in the sense that where Zay Flowers is a clear wide receiver too, it's
Mhm.
just the production there.
How it
Because
comes,
what Tommy is right too is that they're a run heavy team. Lamar Jackson's a run first quarterback, and his passing is just way too inconsistent for me.
yep.
And I kind of want to see a little more like you said, he let you down at the worst possible time, which was the end of the year. It was fantastic to start the year, yes, but when you needed the most, he did not show up, and that's not even his fault. It was just the game plan's fault. You know what I mean? It was just they were running the ball, it was working. Derrick Henry was still having monster
Well,
games. They didn't need to pass the ball a lot.
and honestly, if the Ravens played throwing football like they did 2 years ago against the Miami Dolphins week 1 when they blew them out of the water, that was before the Tyreek Hill coming over there kind of element. Then yeah, Zay Flowers would be tremendous every single
Tommy,
week.
Tommy, can I make you feel a little bit better about him? So Lamar Jackson finished the year with 41 passing touchdowns. How many of those passing touchdowns went to Zay Flowers?
Um,
8.
Four.
Oh gosh,
Four.
I
So
was being real generous.
I think, and he finished as like I said, he finished as the wide receiver 22 with four touchdowns. So I think that there's some room for touchdown regression to him, especially when it's, another year for Derrick Henry. At some point, Derrick Henry is going to slow down, but, nothing's going to, I mean, we know his passing volume situation. So, I mean, I think he's in line for some a little bit more upside stuff next year. I'd be
yeah, but
perfectly happy with him as a wide receiver too.
yeah,
You know,
but again, Zay Flowers is not catching the ball in the red zone. He's not there inside the 20s touchdown maker kind of thing. If they're throwing the ball, that's going to be there. Lamar Jackson's is throwing to the big body or is throwing to Bateman.
all right. Well, we'll see how that shakes out. let's.
Hey, Bateman had 8 touchdowns this past
I
year.
know. So it's all of our dismay. Let's move on. Finishing at number 23. This will be an interesting conversation. Puka Nacua. So you drafted Puka Nacua as the wide receiver 8, finishes as the wide receiver 23. So not good in terms of your draft investment. But he missed obviously basically the
5
entire
games.
first half of the year, 5 games. Then the first game of the year, he left the game early with the injury that kept him out. However, once he came back, and he came back a lot early than they had pretended that they were going to have him come back. He did the opposite of the Kyle Shanahan. He comes back and he was basically dominant for the entire rest of the year, completely usurping everything from Cooper Kupp as the year went on. His average was 15.2, which would have put him as the wide receiver 4 in fantasy football if he was on the pace that he was once he came back. He was everything that you could have wanted when he played, everything that you would have drafted and more, but minus the injury. So I think Puka's going to go significantly high next year. It'll be interesting to see where his ADP is. He'll be ranked high for me. Perfectly happy with him as a wide receiver 1 next year.
Well,
Right?
the crazy. Sorry, go ahead.
That's right. I think that also is dependent on what Matt Stafford does. If Stafford is not there next year, I think you really have to set your expectations. I agree with you. He is the clear-cut wide receiver 1 there, and he will continue to be. I think he's going to dominate Cooper Kupp. But if Stafford is not there, you got to monitor their quarterback situation, and I think that's going to be telling for the rest of the year. If Stafford's there, though, I agree with you. I think he's top 3.
Yeah, I mean, if Stafford's not there, like we were discussing a couple weeks ago, I think that whole team is just it's rebuild mode, coach rebuild mode, all that stuff is going to happen. So I mean, then Cooper Kupp's not there most likely. There's going to be a whole big change then if that changes with Stafford. So I mean,
so.
I will say this with the injury for both Kupp and also Nakua throughout the season. Kupp only finished behind Nakua of six targets. But the thing is, Puka had those primary targets, those short yardage targets, which basically gave him the opportunity to catch the ball a lot more. Almost broke 1,000 yards with those 5 games, and then basic 5 games out, and then he only had 3 touchdowns. So the touchdown regression was huge right there.
Right.
If I think they were running the ball a lot. They were scoring. The short yardage. The short yardage were going to either Williams, or whatchamacallit, a lot of them were going to Robinson, or Tutu Atwell. So those were touchdown makers over there. But when it was close to the goal, when it was close to the end zone, the running backs were getting the ball and they were scoring those close touchdowns.
In terms of his consistency, I mean, he came back in week 8. There was only 1 week in which he busted. Every week he was good for your team.
And it's terrible because honestly, you were thinking the other way. You were thinking Cooper Kupp was just going to turn it up, and you're plugging him in rosters, and it was just such a bust. And honestly, and I wonder if Cooper Kupp was just hurt for the rest of the year and he was just playing decoy. I don't know. Who knows? There's a possibility. I mean, we'll see next year if he gets re-signed or if he stays with them. Whatever the case is, I mean, maybe just, Stafford knew he was going to the healthier guy, younger guy, and he was gonna, be able to get them the yardage they needed, and he did a great job. So, more power to Puka. Puka got the Cooper Kupp targets, still stolen away from Cooper Kupp.
Yes, he did.
I think that I don't know if you guys will agree with this or not, but I actually think a perfect candidate would be Sam Darnold for the Rams, especially with Stafford's retirement up in the air because he's unsure what he wants to. I know his wife's been kind of advocating for him to retire and hang it up, but
back. He still has. I think still has some fractures in his back still.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting because that's actually not I don't think it's personally a bad sign for the Rams to get someone like a Darnold who's a free agent, and I still don't think that'll hurt Nacua all that much if Darnold went there versus drafting a rookie quarterback.
I agree. I mean, and Darnold, that was the trade that they were talking about earlier in the season. Stafford, it would have been a 1-to-1 trade. Stafford.
Oh yes, you're right.
For Darnold, but then like the game that they had, like no, the Rams beat the Vikings in that game, and so they were like, no, now the Rams are taking off, and so they kept rolling it back. it would have been interesting to see if the Rams would have ended up beating the Eagles and kind of see how they would have shaked out. But maybe you're right. Maybe Stafford does retire, and we'll reassess how we handle the way we think about Puka and Cooper next year. It'll be interesting. But I mean, given if it's the same thing, if it's Stafford, I don't. I mean, Puka for me is easily top 10.
Yeah,
So
I agree with that 100%.
yeah. So there we go. So that's Puka number 24. We've already talked about him. That's Devontae Smith. And so there we go. That is the wide receivers 13 to 24. And next week we'll cover wide receivers 25 through 36, and of course some honorable and dishonorable mentions.
Yep,
Any
yep.
closing thoughts?
Yeah, you got anything before I flip on?
No, just all as always, thank you so much for tuning in and thank you for all your support. Please like and subscribe.
Yep, yeah, and Ant will be out for the next couple weeks. He's
Yes.
so we'll have some fill-ins, and we'll be jumping some new content out there, and I think next week we have Tyler is going to jump on and be the third man. So everybody welcome Tyler when we bring him on, and we're looking and ready to go. Keep it going, but good luck, Ant, and we'll
Thank
see
you
you
guys.
soon.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Good
Go
night. Good night.
Saquon.
Thank you, everybody.